All right, welcome. In this explainer, we're going to break down a pretty powerful theological framework. It's all about establishing God's dominion right here on Earth, and we're pulling all this directly from our source material. Okay, so let's just dive right in with a big question, one that our source material really centers on. Is the gospel that most of us know missing something? Something really, really crucial? This one question, you see, is the launchpad for rethinking the entire mission. So where does this all start? Well, the source material sets up this idea of a tale of two gospels. And we're not talking about small differences here. It frames them as two completely different ways of seeing faith, and more importantly, how to act in the world. And this slide, wow, it just lays it all out, right? On one side, you've got what's called the gospel of salvation. Think of it as focused on you, me, the individual. It's all about getting to heaven, right? The focus is up. But then, on the other side, there's the gospel of the kingdom. This one is totally different. It's not about individuals, it's about nations. And it's not pointing up to heaven, it's pointing down to transforming this world, to occupying society right here and now. Okay, so that leads us to the next big question. Who is Jesus? Is he a savior or is he king? Because according to this framework, your answer to that question changes everything. It completely shifts the mission and tells you which of those two gospels you're really following. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. Let's talk about the word Christ. The source makes a huge point here. Christ isn't his last name, like Jesus Smith. No, it's a title. It's actually the Hebrew word for king, the anointed one. And that little shift from a name to a royal title, well, that's presented as a game-changing revelation. And building right on top of that idea, the source says that the church, the ecclesia, can only be built on one thing: the revelation that Jesus Christ is king. If you miss that, if you don't get his kingship, the argument is that the whole foundation of the church is, well, just not there. So what does this kingship look like in practice? Well, think of it like expanding circles of influence. It's this strategic progression of dominion. It starts small with the church, with believers. Then it expands out to the nation of Israel. And from there, it goes global, covering every single nation on the planet. The goal is what they call Christ's dominion over every square inch. Okay, so if Jesus is a king, not just a savior, that's got to change the job description for the church, right? For sure. It means the mission is way bigger than just saving individual souls. It becomes something societal, something huge. And here's the split. The source material draws a really sharp line. On one hand, you have engaging society, which they say means just evangelizing individuals one by one. But on the other, you have transforming society, and that means discipling the entire nation. We're talking about a shift from just reaching people in a country to fundamentally changing the structures of the country itself. So how do you even begin to do that? Well, to get a handle on this mandate, the source uses this really powerful metaphor. It says that right now, believers are basically living as exiles in Babylon. Now, not the actual ancient city, of course. It's a spiritual state, being planted inside a world system that isn't your true home. And if you're in Babylon, what's the game plan? The source points to what it calls the Daniel strategy. Just think about his story. He took a stand, he worked his way up to have influence in the highest levels of government, he survived all kinds of persecution, and in the end, he was a key part of toppling that kingdom from the inside out. That story is presented as the blueprint for today. All right, now we're getting to what the source calls the big missing piece in so much of modern theology. It's this idea that you cannot separate three things: a people, their God, and their land. This connection is seen as totally non-negotiable if you want to understand destiny. And this simple visual just nails the concept. The source says that thinking about God and man as just a two-way street, like a line, is incomplete. It's missing something. It has to be a triangle. And that third point of the triangle? It's the land, the nation. Without that third piece, the whole picture of destiny and covenant just doesn't work. And the original template for all of this? It's Adam and Eden. Think about it. Adam is placed in the land of Eden and he finds his destiny. He gets exiled from Eden and his destiny is lost. So what's the mission? According to this framework, it's to get back to that connection, to reclaim the land, and in doing so, reclaim your destiny. This quote from the source really drives the point home. It suggests the land isn't just dirt and rocks, it's a spiritual entity. And it says the land doesn't listen to tenants, it doesn't listen to tourists, it only listens to its citizens. That's why being rooted
being a citizen and not just a visitor is framed as being so incredibly important.
Okay, so if destiny is all about the land, the obvious question is which land? And this is where all these ideas start to build to a climax. It all connects to a prophetic timetable and what the source sees as a massive geographical shift that's happening in the world. Like right now, the source uses this great analogy of a game in two halves. The first half of spiritual history, it says, was all about the West. The Reformation in Europe, the big revivals in America. But the whistle's blown for the second half. And now, the spiritual spotlight, the center of the action, is shifting hard from the West over to the East, specifically to the Asia Pacific. And from this viewpoint, what's happening in the news right now isn't random. Current events are seen as direct signs that this big shift is underway. The source points to things like the war in Ukraine or the tensions in the Indo-Pacific and says, hey, these aren't just geopolitical squabbles. They're seen as proof that heaven's focus is moving and a massive spiritual battle is heating up in the East. So, it all comes down to this. The big takeaway is that preaching this specific gospel, this nation-focused gospel of the kingdom, is presented as the last thing that has to happen before the end times. It's not just any old gospel message, it's the full package, the king, his people, and the land, all proclaimed to every nation. And that, according to this framework, is the final testimony, the final play. And it leaves us with a pretty big question, doesn't it? What does it mean for the world if this is it?